Okay, so leading on from the last video, I just realised as well that I didn't put this HDRI dome onto the lighting layer. Complete sausage. So I've selected the asset, right click on the layer, add selected. I'm just going to turn that off for now. I'm going to create a new layer as well. The one on the right creates a new layer and it automatically adds the objects you've got selected. So if you've already made assets and you're making layers, select them first. And then create a layer. But this new layer is going to be called area lighting. Save. Okay, so for this layer, we're going to create area lights. So in the rendering tab, we're using the one on the rightmost side. The other lights available are of varying uses. So the ambient light is going to evenly light your entire scene. But there's a few downsides to this. A, it doesn't work with the Arnold renderer. B, as you can see in the viewport, the lighting is so evenly done that there's no interest. If we were to use renderer which could process that ambient light, it just looks so incredibly unnatural that there's just no point to it. So we've got directional lights. Okay, directional lights are really cool. Just scale this up so we can see it in the viewport. The light is evenly spread out across not evenly spread out. The light is generated from no specific point in the scene. So I could place this light underneath the ground and it wouldn't make a difference. All that matters is the rotation angle for this light. So rays are being cast into our scene from the direction of rotation and they will create shadows based on that. To make sure it's casting shadows, object selected, make sure ray trace shadows is turned on. The amount of rays being used increases the accuracy. Let's go for 20. And in Arnold, we need to make sure that we actually set an exposure. So I know that from the previous video, I need an exposure of like 15 and an intensity of maybe not 15, that was a bit too much. We'll go for 12. If I quickly render that, okay, that's too much. But in the render window, I can dial down the exposure as a post-process effect. I think that's still a bit too much. So let's quickly dial back my exposure. So I know that knocking 5 off the exposure just wasn't enough. So maybe 8. Let's quickly try that again. Oh, still too much. And that's not really taking anything from it. So maybe 3. There you go. So a light exposure of 3. So there is a science to this. It's not something I'm overly intimate with, but we can see that we're getting an all right render out of it. We've got shadows, we've got light. It's functional, but by comparison to, whoops, let me just put this back to 0. Oh, it's still too bright. Okay, let me just dial down the intensity to maybe 4. So in the viewport, it's no longer completely blown out. There. Okay, let's take another 2 off the exposure. All right, we can work with that. So we've got a scene which is reasonably lit. It's a little bit overexposed, which means it's too bright. What the white is going to get washed out everywhere. But if we flick between renders, we see that the original one, which we use the HDRI globe, we've got a little bit more variety in the colors being generated, whereas this is just a complete clinical white. We could turn on color temperatures, so I'm going to quickly press keep image on this, and quickly using a bit of Google, Arnold color temperatures. So Mayer and Arnold got some really good learning resources. So color temperature is I think it's dictated by the actual temperature of the light source, but don't quote me on that. But we've got, what's important is we've got a graph here which communicates how many kelvins we need to set the light to get specific outcomes. So if you're lighting your bedroom, do you want to show it as being a really warm and welcoming space? If so, we're going to kind of want to deviate from this 6,000 kelvins towards maybe 5,000 to give it a nice orangey tint. If we're going for a cold and abandoned look, maybe we'll push it towards 7,500 and give it that blue cast. So the default, it wasn't on 6,500, it was just on pure white. If we change it to 5,000 now, I've already pressed keep image, so we'll re-render it. And we've got a peachy glow to it. Now, personal preference, I think maybe that's a bit too much. Maybe I'll dial it back to 6,000. There we go. So keep image. And now the benefit of keeping image is not only can I make comparisons to kind of measure effect. I think that's got a very slight tint. It might be enough to get across what I want. Or we could go for 5,500. Whatever. So color temperature, really cool. Ray trace shadows is going to increase the accuracy of our shadows. Let me see that render again. I think I might have already played with the settings. On the side of this cube, you can see there's a lot of noise, and on the sphere as well. Now that I'm looking properly, this is an issue where the sampling in your render isn't high enough. I don't want to delve into the science of this too much, so we'll cover the fix, and we can return to it later. So underneath Arnold, we can increase the amount of samples for the light we're working with. So this is going to increase the quality of the outcome. So if I quickly render that region again, it's not really made much of a difference. It should have been a recent update. It's shifted the control instead to the render setting. So in the render window, if we click on the little director's clapper with the little cog on top of it, and we go to Arnold Renderer, if we increase the camera AA to maybe 8 as well, the more you increase it, the better the quality of the renders, but the render time is going to go up exponentially. So in this case, my render time was less than a second. But if I render the entire image again, all of my shadows should be really, I can already see they're perfectly smooth. Maybe not perfectly smooth, but closer to perfect. Good enough that at this distance, I can't see any of the issues. I press escape to cancel the render, I don't need it all. So zooming in, it holds up to scrutiny a bit better. So it's a case of kind of balancing how many samplings it's going to take to get it perfect, as well as versus render times. So in this case, it's turned my render into a 17-second render. If I was trying to render this out to put on a poster, it's going to be really big. It's worth increasing my camera AA setting to maybe 30 or 40, whatever it took to get that setting, get that image crystal clear. Right, so just go off on a little tangent there. Directional lights are totally usable, but I think there's kind of questions over why you'd use it rather than a HDRI map, other than having complete control of the color temperatures and the intensity. You've got let me close these little windows. We've got a point light. Okay, so you could use it as a torch, not a torch, gosh, what's the word? Like a medieval torch, you know, little stick, bit of kerosene on a rag. Oh man, what a burning torch. A burning torch. We'll go with a burning torch. You know what I mean. So a little orange flame flickering in our scene. So the light actually originates from the center of this kind of visualizer in the viewport, and radiates outwards like a miniature sun. But we can actually give it a fall off. So the further objects get away from it, the less impact it has. Yeah. But I don't know about you, but my room does not have burning torches in the corner. So you could use a spotlight. So I'll just scale it up so we can see it. So spotlights have a few little settings we can play around with, such as the angle for how wide the light should be, the penumbra angle, which is, I want to say the fall off for the actual light in conjunction with the actual drop off of how quickly the intensity fades out. Again, we've got linear fall off to try and kind of replicate assets being more realistically lit, rather than the light just kind of pumping out forever into infinity. And we've got the same settings for controlling color temperature and exposures there. But what I'd like you to really use is the area light, because this affords us the most control. So if I move this up and press T whilst the object's selected, I'll get a second move tool up here. So at this point, I can move the second manipulator around and use that to say, right, well, I want my light to be over here. I want using the scale tool, I can change the shape of my light. We can change it from square to other shapes if we wanted. Light effects, nope, it's down here somewhere. It doesn't matter right now, but we can change the light's actual shape. Object display, nah, it doesn't matter. For area light, right, so area light. So we want to set the intensity to a reasonable value, so maybe 5. We'll set the exposure to 2 and increase the samples to 5-ish. And if we render this out, please. It's going to be pitch black, isn't it? It's going to be pitch black. Oof. Pitch black. Okay. And even increasing the exposure, nothing happens. Okay, so at this point, we want to increase the intensity to maybe 15. So going for that original 15-15 again, and hoping, trusting that we're going to get something. Give me light. Come on. Yes, light. Alright. So working in this way, we can position multiple area lights around the scene to create different effects. So we can see already, it looks like I've got 3 little eggs against the kitchen counter. I'm going to pause it there. I'm going to lower my samples to 2, and I'm going to reduce my camera AA back down to like 3 so that my renders are nice and quick for the sake of this video. So within this light, I might say I want to go for kind of a really kind of stylized, kind of Blade Runner-esque lighting setup. So we're going for blue on one side, Control and D to duplicate the camera. I'll move it all the way over here, directly opposite the original light. I'm going to bring the aim. I'm using T to reposition the aim, and I'm going to change the color to orange. Dial back the pureness of it. It's not completely nutty. And we're going to reduce the intensity of it. So if I lower the exposure to maybe 13, let's quickly render that out. So at this point, we get a nice orange glow from the left, but the main light, our primary light, or we'll just go with main light for now. And the left-hand one, which is a reduced intensity, is our fill light. But then again, we might want to duplicate this again. And this time, using T, we just place it behind the scene, really, really, really close. Maybe we'll scale down that light to be maybe A-sized. And we're just going to try and get a... It's hard to see with so many lights in the scene. But I'm just trying to position the light so that it's going to catch the top of the spheres, and maybe we'll give it a really hard blue light behind it. And we'll increase the intensity back to 15, the same strength as the main light. So now at this point, if I zoom in, we'll render that out quick, and hopefully on top. Okay, so the position of my light is too close now. It's completely blown everything out. So let's quickly try and move that back a bit. Maybe there. Sorry. All right. It might be a bit high. Oh, there we go. So now we're getting a bit of an artifact on the object behind it. I could always move that cube back a bit. But the 2 spheres at the very front, we've got our main light coming from the right, a fill light from the left, making sure that none of my shadows are pure black, and then a rim light from behind that's just there to help pop those 2 spheres off of the background and give a little bit of interest.